welcome to Further Together, enriching relationships, creating a better future. We thank you so much for tuning into the program. Like we promised that this day we'll be hosting
A very special couple.
yes, they don't need much introduction within the community because some of you I know you know them as long as when they were still young couple, and now they are seasoned couple dealing with couples issues, leading ministry as well as other ventures.
That's right. Pastor Sarah, Dr. Jamie are here with us. We normally follow them on the backgrounds,
Yeah,
and we love the work that they do. Their
uh-huh.
ministry, Bliss for Couples, which some of you and a lot of you are already aware of what they do. They are authentic in their marriage, and it inspires us. We follow their videos, we watch what they do. And one thing that we've always said on this platform is that if any couple will benefit us, then it will be very selfish for us not to bring them out to you guys to also be impacted by their awesome marriage.
Dr. Jamie and Pastor Sarah, good evening.
Good
Good,
evening.
good evening, guys. Thank you for having us on here. We're actually really excited to be with you both. We're looking forward to this session. We've been talking about it, really believing that it will be very impactful. So, yeah, we're excited. Thank you.
Amen. We feel honored. We feel honored to have you here. You know, your experience and the rapport is one thing which you always talk of when we see the two of you. Those pictures on Facebook, they speak a lot to us. Probably more or less the same way the message which you speak speaks volumes. So please keep on doing the good work. We love those beautiful pictures, the two of you. You know, we wish you always share.
We have a lot of fun together, and we are great friends. And thankfully, I think that comes through. I love Priscilla. I love what you said. Authenticity is a big part of what we are about. We decided a long time ago that we would be very authentic in everything that we did. We'll tell it like it is, and I believe that will bless people. So yeah, thank you.
Yep, I so much believe in that. And we were watching your video on your 27th anniversary, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
27 good years. We were so amazed at how God has taken you from um, teenage sweethearts, I think,
Yeah.
to where you are today. And it is such a powerful thing that you did not have great examples of marriage like we do. So I thought like, oh yeah, we share a good connection here. We didn't get the great models of marriages, and yet you've managed to come out strong despite it all. Pastor Sarah, how has it been for you?
It's been great. I'm married to my best friend, so
Mm.
that makes it so much easier. I'm married to the man that I asked God for. I prayed I went to a youth camp when I was 13, and they asked us to pray for our life partners. And
Wow.
everything I asked God for, God did, and then some. So that's made the journey easy because all along and right from the get-go, I've always known I'm in the right place at the right time and I'm married to the right man. So that's what makes the journey easy. And that's what makes every season that we walk into and walk through one that we survive, because I already know that I am with the right man.
Mm. And Dr. James, how did it happen? Was it just a coincidence?
You know what? What's interesting about our story? I met Sarah. First time I laid eyes on Sarah, she was 13 years old and I was 14. Um,
Mm.
yeah, and it was quite interesting because at that time I wasn't a Christian, and Sarah was, but I think we always talk about how destiny collided and how we knew something inside me told me that this girl was, sort of going to be central to my future. And a couple of years later, she came over to our school at a barbecue. We were having a braai, and I told her at that time, I said, "You're going to be my wife," and she laughed, And But a few months later, we started dating, and here we are, 27 years later.
Wow.
With your childhood sweetheart. Hey, Minister Shama, how are you? It's good to see you.
Oh,
Thank,
wonderful.
yeah, thank you so much for supporting. Priscilla is going to make a formal introduction, and we get into the real business of the day. I know people are waiting. They want to know what we can do. What do we have to do when our relationship hits the rock bottom?
Okay.
Yes, rightly as you've said, these guys need no introduction. They are Zimbabwe's top couple, amazing couple. We love what they do. We love the amazing connection that is between them. And not only are they great mentor couples, they are also great parents. You're blessed with four beautiful children who you have inspired to become great in everything that they do. So we have brought them on the platform to speak to us about when relationship fizzles out.
Mhm. And I think to start with, we know that when people are in a relationship, it is quite common that at one given point it will reach a certain point where it fizzles.
Mhm.
Could you be kind enough to share with us any moment in your relationship where you felt like now it's hitting the rock bottom, it's fizzling out?
Okay. Do you want to go first? What's interesting with life. Sarah alluded to this. Life is lived in seasons. And there are different seasons. I know, for example, when a couple will have children, that's one of the biggest challenges because sometimes you're used to being together, just the
Yep.
two of you, and then before you know it, you've got a little one who's come into the picture. Sometimes the husband feels like, maybe mom is more preoccupied with the baby, maybe not so much with me. And like you said, we've had four children. So, at different times, and especially, I guess, when, Sarah's had a child, physiologically, biologically, she might not be as, available as she typically would be. And those have been some of the instances where we've experienced that, where we realized that we had to make an extra special investment as a result of that, because it's very easy for the husband to feel like he's being ignored, he's being sidelined, and so then you think to yourself, you know what, let me go out there, let me find somebody else to be with. That's a very, it's a temptation that a lot of couples fall prey to. But one of the things that, and we'll talk about it in more detail as we go forward, one of the things that we're big believers in is the power of investment. So when you are going through those times, that's not the time to disinvest, it's the time to make an even bigger investment. And it almost feels counterintuitive because you're saying, but I'm putting more and it looks like I'm getting less. But actually, the more you put in, the more you're guaranteed to reap down the line. And so what we've done is at times like that, when I'll speak for myself, as a husband, when you're thinking, man, I've got this beautiful baby, I've got this beautiful woman, but she's maybe looking at the child, I'm not as in play as I typically would be. That's not the time when you say, well, look, I'm going to find interest elsewhere. That's the time when you say, actually, you know what? I'm going to try and blow this woman's mind. I'm going to do more. I'm going to make myself more available. I'm going to try and make her feel beautiful because she's just had a baby. That's a big, big event.
Very challenging.
It's challenging,
Yeah.
but that's when you continue to make the investment. And I mean, we always talk about one particular incident. We had a very challenging time in our relationship, probably about 6 or 7 years ago. And Sarah and I sat down in a Costa Coffee.
The coffee.
Costa Coffee, yeah.
Oh, yes, coffee.
Yes. And we had a very heart-to-heart conversation because it was a difficult time. We had some challenges in ministry, challenges in business, just challenges in life generally. And we sat there and had a real heart-to-heart conversation and said, look, you know what? Neither of us are prepared to be married in a loveless relationship. We either make this work or we go our separate ways. But thanks be to God, because of that conversation and our commitment to each other, because we've always loved each other. But even when we hit a difficult season like that, we said, boom, we're gonna put more time in, we're gonna invest even more. And it worked. And here we are, 7 years later.
Pastor Sarah, how did it feel for you?
Well, it's challenging when you go through those seasons and times in the marriage where it feels like maybe we're not as in love as we were, and 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 maybe things are not as hot and as beautiful as they were. That happens, and it's par for the course in relationships. It's par for the course in marriages. It's par for the course in the different chapters and the seasons that you walk together. But it's to understand the foundation. If the foundation is firm, then no matter what comes to try and rock the boat or rock the building, you will not be windswept, and the building will not fall down. And I think our foundation has always been Christ, and our foundation has always been our commitment to one another. And our foundation has also always been, from a very early age, we decided, after having looked at marriages around, marriages close by in our families and loved ones and friends, and we said to each other, the D word is not allowed. So when you're in a relationship and you don't have, the D word is divorce.
All right.
So when you're in a relationship and you don't have a get out of jail card, you don't have a parachute, you don't have a plan B, and you're saying, you know what, Lord, we're going to take this thing and live our lives and live our relationship and live our marriage according to what the word says. Yes, these times suck. We're not spending as much time. We haven't been intimate for the past 6 weeks. We haven't been intimate for the last, 2 months, and it's difficult, and we're not talking, and it feels like we're speaking two totally different languages. What happened? When did we disconnect? When did the dissonance come in? I didn't even notice that things were this bad. And this is what happens. You just wake up. There's one day you wake up and you ask yourself, how did things get this bad? And that's when you need to know that your foundation is sure, and that your commitment, as long as you know that your commitment is not threatened, that we're going to sit down and we're going to talk and we're going to go through this and weather the storm together, then you're able to come out of it. But if one or the other or both of you are constantly threatening, I'll leave you, I'll divorce, let's separate, I can't do this, then it's always going to be rocky. And so because of that, you sometimes you pretend in a difficult season when you actually need to be sitting down, because you're scared that if I say I'm not happy, I'm not feeling like we're spending enough time together, we're having enough sex, I don't think we're having enough sex, then you're worried that that's going to rock the boat, and you're going to be threatened again that maybe this is not going to work, so let's break it up. So the foundation, and that's always been our thing, the foundation. We work on the foundation more than anything else, and then any other structure can stand.
As counselors, you always speak of red flags or the telltale signs. What can you say are the flags or the telltale signs of a marriage now fizzling out?
Okay.
Well, some of the telltale signs are when you're having disagreements or you're having arguments on a regular basis and you don't care anymore. Where yet in the past, you would sit down and you would talk and you would resolve and you would seek to gain your other one back. You'd seek to apologize. You would seek to make things and to make amends and patch things and come to a place of healing. But when you don't care anymore, that's a red flag. When you're prepared to be, another thing that we agreed on early in our marriage, when you're prepared to say, you know what, we're not talking, we're not happy, so I'm going to sleep in the other room. You drive a wedge. And you do that once, you do it twice, it becomes a habit. Whenever we're not talking, the other, one of you is sleeping in the spare room. You drive a wedge because you get rid of that intimacy. Whereas when you know that there is no get out of jail card, we're not talking, but you know what? We're going to be up and cozy in that bed.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's how you make up.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's how you make up, where you just start laughing and realizing how ridiculous this is. We're in the same bed, but we're trying not to touch in the same bed. And that's how you make up. But those are some of the warning flags. Do you have any warning flags?
I just have to reinforce what you said, Sarah, in terms of, when you notice couples no longer talking or arguing. In fact, I always say to women, if your man is still talking, then you've got a shot. But the moment he stops talking at all, you've got a real problem, because he's disengaged. He's no longer interested. And a lot of that is a product. If you've ever heard us, speak about marriage, one of the things that we talk about typically is the danger of allowing hardness into your heart. Because the moment you let hardness come into your heart, that's the end of your relationship. And I mean, there's a whole teaching around that. But the most important thing that you have to do is you have to allow, when you get married, you may have heard us say this before, that it's impossible for a man to love a woman unless he dies first. You have to be willing to die to your preference. You have to understand that you have a lot of physical strength, but you have to put it under subjection. You have to submit and recognize that meekness and submission is not just the woman's responsibility. So we are always urging couples to keep talking, keep the conversations going, keep speaking, even when sometimes you think to yourself, you know what, I'm really irritated, I'm really pissed off about what has happened. But when you are able to vocalize your problems and you talk about it, then chances are that you still have an opportunity to resolve them. But then if you don't talk about stuff, and that is one of the biggest signs, as we said, when the conversations are no longer flowing, it's quite interesting. I'll just say this quickly. We a lot of times we see couples together and it's like they're strangers. They, like, you can literally see, it's like they don't know each other, because somewhere along the line they stop the conversation. What we have always decided to do, it doesn't matter where we're going. Today I was up and about, just going about doing our business, but I make it a point to phone Sarah at least 2 or 3 times during that time. And the reason for that is because we recognize I'm going to be seeing her in half an hour, but I'll pick up the phone and I'm talking to her, because it just keeps that conversation going. So one of the biggest red flags is when the conversations stop, and you have to fight against that. It's so important.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. Yeah.
All my ladies out there, let's say no to stonewalling. Honestly, because growing up, we get all this silent treatment. If he's not doing what you like, just give him the silent treatment.
Oh,
Just don't talk to him. And it really doesn't help, or neither does it build a marriage. There's a lot of people that feel that sometimes you may put in all you can as an individual or as a couple. You can work so hard. You can try to keep the communication going, get the intimacy coming through, but still things do not work. What are your thoughts on that?
I think if you've got, and we've got to be very clear here, because as human beings, we are, if I'm honest, we are the masters of lying to ourselves. We tell ourselves certain narratives.
That's right.
We say, I've done everything I know to do.
I've gone everywhere.
Yeah, the truth of the matter is that's very rarely the case. When you have 2 individuals who are committed, the Bible says, can 2 walk together unless they be agreed? So what happens is, when you are both committed to the success of a marriage, it will work. What generally happens is one is invested and the other one isn't, you see. So the one who is saying, I've done everything, is more likely saying, I don't want to try anymore. In other words, I've got to the end of my tether and I'm pretty much done. This is the reason why we spoke about it. When we had our come to Jesus conversation, it was us saying, are we both prepared to make the investment to make this relationship work? Because the moment one says they're not prepared to do it, there's no point trying. And a lot of times that's the difficulty. It may be the wife, it may be the husband, who's checked out, and the other person is still invested and they're still trying to make it work. But then, you cannot make a relationship work on your own. But I promise you, if the 2 of you are committed, like fully, all right, it has to work. Because remember, let's get into the scripture for a little bit. The Bible says a 3-fold cord is not easily broken. So it's not even just you and your spouse, it's you, your spouse, and God. And when the 3 of you are committed to a success, to something, please explain to me how it will not work. It has to work. It has to work.
So, Pastor Jamie, the issue of compatibility, me and him are not compatible. What's your take on that?
Compatibility. Oh my gosh. I've heard compatibility brought out in so many different. We're not sexually compatible. We are. Sarah and I are the very opposites in almost every department. I am 6'5", she's 5'1". we are our physical differences are probably a mirror into how different we are as
That's
people. We
right.
are not the same
That's right.
people.
He's an early bird. I'm a night owl.
Yeah, I wake up at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
Sarah wake up a little later at 9 o'clock. Sort of 9:30, 10. I'm getting ready for bed. That's when Sarah's she's alive. She's like fully alive. We're the exact opposites. But what we have understood is, when people start talking about a lack of compatibility, what they're saying is the thing that I used to like about you, the thing that attracted me to you, is the thing that is now irritating me about you, and that's what we call incompatibility. You see, but what you learn to do through time is you learn to appreciate and recognize you're never going to be the same. You're not supposed to be the same, because if you are exactly the same, then one of you is irrelevant. And that's what you must recognize. But your uniqueness, when you both bring something different to the table, Sarah is a big seafood lover. I'm not a particularly big seafood lover. I like chicken like a black man should. Every black man should love chicken. Sarah can't stand the sight of chicken, but she loves seafood. So we have understood compatibility, or a lack thereof, is it's a bit of a myth. You bring what you bring to the table, and you eventually get to the stage where you accept one another for how you are, regardless of how different you are.
That's right. That's right. Compatibility as well sometimes is choosing to harden your heart and not give any ground. When we look at at what the Bible begins to tell us about love in First Corinthians chapter 13, it talks about how love is kind, and love is long suffering, and it doesn't envy, and love does not parade itself. It's not puffed up. It says love does not behave rudely, nor does it seek its own. It's not provoked. It does not think evil. It does not rejoice in iniquity, but it rejoices in truth. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never fails. That's what my Bible tells me in 1 Corinthians 13 and verse 8. It says, love never fails. And so, again, it depends on what your foundation is on. There are people who've gone into arranged marriages where they've never met, and they meet at the altar. There are people who've been forced into a marriage, and yet you hear that, they grew to love each other, and at the end of their lives they don't want to be parted. There are people who've ended up in marriages in so many different circumstances. There are people who are from different parts of the world, and yet they come together. Love never fails. It's when we say we're not compatible, when again we're looking for some kind clause in the fine print to get out of the covenant. But you see, marriage is not a contract. Marriage is not like gift gaff and O2 and talk and whatever. It's not a contract. Marriage is a covenant. And when you approach it as a covenant, then you know what? You live the words of your covenant. But if you feel like it's a contract, you will always find a get out clause. You will always find a reason to say, me and O2 are not compatible. So you know what? I'm going to gift gaff. Me and gift gaff are not compatible. I'm going to EE. Me and EE are not compatible. I'm going to Tesco Mobile. And before you know it, you've been through 5 mobiles and 5 mobile companies. The same thing. Sometimes you've got to see, and see through something and work through something and figure out what is it that is causing the chaos and that's making you feel like you're not compatible. Because sometimes maybe people are too codependent. So you're trying to make the other one be exactly like you. If you're both exactly the same, you like the same food, you like everything the same, one of you is irrelevant. Like Jamie said, the things that drew you together are the differences. But sometimes those differences become the things that drive you nuts about that person.
That's right. Unlike poles attract, isn't it? So that's it's differences that attracted us to one another.
That's right.
The pastors, we have other singles that are watching on the show on this platform, and some of them may be wondering, how best can they know that they're actually divorced even before the wedding? Because for many people, you can actually identify that this relationship is not going anywhere. But for the people that are in love, they may feel like, no, we're fine. And then later on, it doesn't work out. So how can a single know they're headed for divorce before they even get married?
Okay, I think it's very important. One of the things that couples fail to do, and we always encourage people when they're single and dating to ask a lot of questions.
Yep.
To have very difficult conversations at the very beginning of the relationship, because sometimes what people do is they hope and pray that if I don't talk about this,
A miracle
then
will
yeah, a miracle will happen. For example, he's not saved, but I'm going to pray because a lot of women believe that they're assistant Holy Spirits, like somehow they can magically transform this man once he's married. But the reality is, it's important for you to talk about everything right from the inception. Let's be very clear about a lot of stuff. Okay, let's talk. Do you want to be married? Yes. Are you prepared to be married long term? Do you see marriage as something that you're trying? Is it a test run, or are you prepared to be committed long term? How many children do you want to have? It's amazing how people don't ask questions like that, and then when they get together and then they're married, they suddenly think, hang on, but I thought you wanted children. No, actually I don't want children. And now you've got a problem, you see. So in a bid to sort of gloss over the challenges, they don't talk about them, and then the next thing, you're married to this person, and now separating from them becomes a legal dilemma. It becomes a spiritual dilemma. It becomes an emotional dilemma, when if you'd just been very honest from the beginning, you wouldn't have that problem. So it's not, no one is suggesting for a moment that it's easy. They're difficult conversations. I always tell Sarah this, and I'm not being mean when I say it, but I know that there was, like some of the young ladies that I would have dated, I knew, I was very clear that they were not going to be in my future, because they just didn't have that thing that could keep my attention long term. You see what I mean? I encourage, it's true. I encourage young men, and young women, when you're looking at a relationship, be genuinely invested in the person, so that, 50 years from now, because I'm planning on chasing Sarah around our house into our 90s. I've already told her that she needs to be in good shape,
Yes.
because she had that little thing that when I thought about not spending the rest of my life with her, I would always be, like if I hadn't married her, genuinely, I would have been thinking all the time, where is she? Who is she with? What is she doing? Those are the little young ladies that came about. Honest to God, they can be wherever they are. God bless their cotton socks. God bless who they are, what they're doing. In my heart, I genuinely don't care, So I always encourage people, have something in that person that you couldn't live without. Today, at 27 years of marriage, and I'm not ashamed to say this, 27 years of marriage, if Sarah is not in my life, I literally feel like I won't be able to breathe. Like, it's like a thing. Like, I feel half incomplete when she's not around. You see what I mean? and that is exciting, because I believe that that's what God, has always desired. People try and tell us that, like the longer that you've been together, it's going to get boring and stale. It's not true. We are enjoying our marriage now more than when we first started. We're enjoying our sex life now more than when we first started. We have, people have got so many myths about how a marriage should be. But for me, the fundamentals, if you're starting out, is, look, if I look at this person, can I go a day without talking to them? You know what I mean? And if the answer is yes, then chances are you're not really invested. For me, there's no day that can go past with me not talking to her. So just that's some of the narrative. And I hope that answers the question.
Oh, yeah.
Somebody wrote Kathleen. There is that Kathleen.
About Sarah, Pastor Sarah.
Kazat in Zimbabwe, we call it Kazat about Sarah. Yeah, that's right. That's so powerful to hear. 27 years, and yet the fire keeps burning and burning and burning.
You still rocking each other. One of the challenges which probably couples with children who are in the age of being young adults normally faces, human beings are quite spiritual. So when an issue is there between mom and dad, it also affect the children and they easily catch it if mom and dad are not in good mood. How do couples resolve their issues without affecting their children? Or is it possible for mom and dad to hit the rock bottom without affecting the children and without also the children knowing?
It's not possible to do it without them knowing, because we live in a time where our children are very astute. This generation is different to how a lot of us were when we were their age. I mean, when we were younger, the only way we knew our parents were not talking is when you heard "Yo way" in the bedroom. You know what I mean? And then you knew, or your mother is screaming or crying. Then you're okay. They're not happy. You know what I mean? And then there's the pitter patter of feet and I'll kill you and all of that chaos, you know. But generally, we didn't know when they were having silent treatments with some of them, you know. But then with this generation, because we live, especially for those of us who are living in Western countries, we are living in such close proximity with our kids. You go to the shops with your kids, you go to take them to school, everywhere. Right now, this is week 14. And we've been locked down in the same space for 14 weeks. So and because you said something, we're spirit beings, they perceive, they discern, they pick it up. But I think it's important to not leak on your children. So you're unhappy with their father, and like, your father is no good, he's not there, and you know, you start, your father is not good, he's just useless, and you're imparting that seed to your daughters. You know, all men are dogs, men are just fools, all men are dogs, this man is useless, I don't even know, you know, because you're unhappy for that moment. But what you don't realize is that your displeasure for that moment, where you will go and make up, maybe that night or in a few days' time, you've sown a seed in your daughter, where she begins to think men are a problem, all men are dogs, and men are difficult. And then with your son, with some sons, they have a protective thing over their mothers. So now you find that there is chaos, and fathers and sons are bumping heads because the son wants to protect his mother. He wants to make sure that his mom is safe. He wants to make sure his mom is never beaten down again. He wants to make sure, you know, that he wants to defend her. Do you see what I mean? And already you've got chaos in the house. So it's important to have to not leak on your children, especially the older ones. Sometimes the younger ones may not fully comprehend what's going on, but the older ones, you can't pull the wool. We've got a 19-year-old and a 25-year-old. You cannot pull the wool over their eyes. So even when Jamie is saying that when things were really bad and had hit rock bottom for us, our 25-year-old was 19 at the time, 18, 19. So there's no way that he didn't see the tension and the static. But the one thing we tried to never do was to leak on them. And to and also what we also try to do is to also give them a bit of respect, because their minds work. We then sat down with them and told them that we're going through a really tough patch, guys. So we're not in the we're not the kind of parents who don't talk. We talk to our kids. We're not the kind of parents who just make our kids think everything is fine and hunky-dory. When we had nothing, we said, guys, we have lost nothing. We have hit rock bottom. There is no money. This X amount is what's coming in every week. Guys, let's make this work. We're a team, and let's do this together. Because if they have not been communicated to about what's going on, you find there's a lot of dissonance in the family. But when you come to a place of agreement, and we're a family that prays together, and we talk things through, and we pray things through, and we faith things through, because if they can be with us in our good times, when we're driving good and rolling and living in good houses and the money is flowing and we shop wherever we want, we eat wherever we want, why can't we tell them that when we only have 20 pounds among the 6 of us, for that week?
Yes.
So I've probably gone down so many rabbit holes, but I am answering the same question. Yeah.
And guys, I just wanted to weigh in really quickly on that and say, a bit like what Sarah was saying, I think sometimes we try and create an artificial sort of reality for our kids, And we make it seem like, with relationships, the moment you have a disagreement, that's the end of the relationship. For us, what we've endeavored to do, one of the first things that me and Sarah did, and we reinforce it almost every year without fail, we tell our children, neither of you or none of you guys are more important, more important than Sarah. I'll tell the kids,
and vice versa.
Oh,
Yeah.
Because what that does, it lets them know that they are wonderful, they're important, we love them to bits, but nobody's more important than Sarah in my life. And so even with my kids, I have never, like we're saying, we have a 25-year-old son and a 9-year-old son. My sons have never come to me and said, I feel like my mom is in danger because of you, because I am the first protector of the woman. You know what I mean? I would be shocked if my sons came to me and said, we feel like you're threatening our mother. I'll be like, on what basis? Because I'd sooner threaten you than her. Do you see what I mean? And so what that has done is we have created almost a force field, which means that even when the disagreements happen, and they will, this myth of couples go a year, we never fight, we never argue. We always say, guys, well done. I don't know how you've managed that, but for us, we're saying to our families and our children, yes, when we have a disagreement, it's not the end of the world. We will have a disagreement, just be comfortable that we are scrapping today, but tomorrow is going to be fine, because our arguments don't last long. We don't do silent treatment like 2, 3 days, 4 days. That day we're done. We will fix it that day. You see what I mean? And that simply means that the kids realize. One time we were having a disagreement and this was a funny one, because I came downstairs. I was trying to be very healthy in that season of our lives, and Sarah was cooking.
No, we need counseling for this one.
Yeah, so Sarah was cooking. No, we don't need counseling.
No, we need counseling
Listen
for this
to
one.
this.
Yeah.
Listen to this. So Sarah was cooking. She was cooking rice, but she cooked everything, all right? But she cooked white rice. And I decided on that day that I wanted brown rice.
Mr. never cooked anything for himself for 25 years. Comes and gets a pot and puts his brown rice in there. I've cooked, everything is set. Everyone is waiting for Dad to come. Dad is on a healthy tip. He gets his brown rice. He's never cooked a day in his life. You can see him doing it all wrong. The pots even sound wrong. And he wants to try and cook his brown rice. Oh, hell,
if you want to, but what was funny about that experience was not even what happened between us, because we were both vexed, because
I couldn't even wait to go upstairs, because normally we will argue, or have a disagreement alone. That day, no. That day, the mix of the Ndebele and the Shona in me clashed and rose up, and it was hectic.
But what was the funniest thing about it was our children's reaction. They laughed at us like you can't believe. They laughed and laughed and laughed. And I think that came from a place of realizing this is not a big deal. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
Because the environment is safe. So it's an environment where we're encouraging you. It's okay to disagree. It's not going to last. It's not the end of the marriage. This is not, I've disagreed with your mom, brown versus white, right? And now we're done. No, they laughed until we started laughing. And then the next thing, you're on the next thing. You know what I mean? So
out of interest, did you eat the rice, the white rice, or did you go for the brown?
No, I ate the white rice. I think wisdom prevailed,
Girl power.
They say wisdom is the principal thing. I realized here I have to make sure that I don't die because of a pot of brown rice. No way.
Guys, he was having a what I call a near-death experience. There are times when you upset your spouse and you don't even realize that they're so upset and you could die any moment. He was having a near-death experience, and I think sanity prevailed. He thought, I think I just saw a flash of the pearly gates. Yeah. Let me come back home. Yeah.
White rice it is. White rice.
Right. Wisdom to all the men out there. Thank you for sharing that. You've highlighted how finance had contributed at some point to distress in your marriage. And we all know that it's a major factor when it comes to relationship stress. So how best do you advise a couple that are going through relationship difficulty, maybe job loss, and they've hit a crisis and they're really finding it hard to cope?
Yeah.
I'll go first. Yeah. Let me go first.
Yeah, please.
You know what, guys? if you're going to be married for any number of years, this is something that people need to actually know, because sometimes they see people and they think, oh, these guys have got a perfect marriage and they've got a perfect. You're going to go through seasons. There'll be
Yeah.
seasons of that, like you said, where it feels like, oh my goodness, you know what, things are not as rosy and as sweet, and maybe there's something wrong with the chemistry. They're the seasons of the you're breastfeeding, you've had a baby. For me, I was dealing with C-sections. I've got a baby. He's going to work, so he doesn't wake up at night to help with the baby, and I'm up with the baby, and the different ones are different. So if you've got a fussy baby, you're gonna have different seasons. You're going to have seasons where there is no money. You're going to have seasons where the work, all of a sudden, one of you're told, you know what, you've been made redundant, or there is no work for you here. And all of a sudden, you can't pay your bills. You can't pay your mortgage. You can't pay for your car. You can't buy food. Your standard of living goes down. And that's where resilience is needed. And that's where, again, the vows of the marriage are tested. And that's why when the priest is marrying a couple, he asks you in sickness and in health.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know what I mean? In the good times and the bad times. But because
Mm.
we're so much in love, we just gloss over the bad times and we think it's always going to be good. You
Mm.
ask anyone who's ever been married, you will have those tough seasons where even financially it is difficult. And it's to understand and allow the love and allow the relationship and allow one another to go through that season, but say, you know what, believe that we're going to come through.
Yeah.
Believe that we're coming out.
Absolutely. And I think, what's interesting is, Sarah's talking about seasons. We started out as a very young couple. When we had our first son, we had absolutely no money. I was a third year law student at, in Zim. Our kid wore secondhand clothes for a large part of his life,
Mm.
and then for 3 years later, I was a millionaire, literally, and then we went through a season, came to the United Kingdom, started from scratch, had no money, built up again, got to the stage where we had plenty of money, lost all of it, and had to rebuild again from scratch. I mean, it was crazy. We've had those seasons, you see. And what tends to happen when you're going through those seasons, it can feel like they're never going to come to an end.
Yeah.
And a lack of money, it produces tremendous stress upon the relationship. And, that's where there's a lot of discord and things like that. But, one of the lessons that we have learned is it doesn't matter what we have it in common. It's not her money, my money. We have everything that we have in common. And we've always been dreamers, because you can always escape your reality on the canvas of your imagination. So even if you are in the midst of a very dark season, it doesn't mean you're going to be there forever. We will sit together, we will dream, we will plan. At the time, there was one time when we were homeless and we didn't have even we had nothing. And we started planning. So what's going to happen? Okay, our next home, what is it going to look like? And Sarah had us sit down in the lounge and she started putting together a vision board. And the vision board
We
had,
always had vision boards. Yeah.
it had an 8-bedroom house on there. And we are living in that house right now. But at the time, we had nothing. We literally, which she was talking about trying to figure out how you can make 20 pounds feed 6 people. That's where we were. But what we refused to do, we refused to say, well, this is our reality. We said, we're coming out of where we are, And when you're able to dream together, that's what makes the pain more palatable. But if you don't dream and all you can see is your reality, and then you start now pointing fingers at each other, that's when the problem starts. So for us, we said, no, even for me, I'm saying this to the guys as well. It was a real reality check for me when the Lord spoke to me at one time, because we were in the midst of a very dark season. And I was saying to Sarah, but if you earn this amount of money during this time, then everything will be fine, because I'm bringing this in, you bring this in, and then everything will be fine. And
I was too depressed to look
she
for a
was
job.
down in the dumps,
down,
and she
down,
just
down.
didn't want to know. And God said to me, I never forget the time when God said to me, Jamie, the problem is not Sarah, the problem is you, because your vision is too small. You can make this amount of money you're asking to bring in without even much.
Again, Pastor.
Yeah.
Rewind that one again, Pastor, please.
Okay, so we say rewind selector, yes? So I'm going back.
Yeah, man.
Right. So I remember the time, because at the time, I'd put this little budget together, and then I'd said, well, if I bring in this amount of money and Sarah brings in this amount of money, then we will be fine, you know. And I kept talking to her and talking to her, but Sarah, it's like I was saying nothing. She couldn't hear it, you know. She was down in the dumps. She was depressed. And then one time I went to the Lord in prayer, and I was really sort of remonstrating with him and saying, God, you know, but what is going on here? Why won't she help me out? And God said, it's because your vision, you have to become bigger. The amount of money that you are asking her to bring in, if you become bigger, you can generate this money. So you might be, effectively, you're a V12 engine, but you're functioning at V6 level. So you've got to step up, you know. And when I heard those words, they were painful. You know, literally, I was like, nah, this is crazy. But you know what? I heeded them. And then I stepped into another gear. And then before you know it, boom, the vision is big, the money's flowing, Sarah steps in, and we are flying together, and we're doing an amazing thing. So the most important thing I think at those times is, you know, you have to be very inward looking as well. You look at yourself, ask yourself, can I do more? Can I do better? What can I contribute? I'm a big believer in the men assuming the responsibility, you know, of leading. It doesn't mean you're always going to be making the most amount of money. It doesn't mean that. I've had seasons where Sarah was working and I wasn't earning a penny, but I've always understood that my job is, I am the high priest, you know, and if you're the high priest, you have to be the one who prays more. I'm always having a go at the guys and telling them, guys, whenever you are in trouble, you're always looking to your woman. Sorry, and I'm now about to speak Shona there, but you know, we're always speaking to the women and saying, guys, you're supposed to pray. You're supposed to be the prayer warrior. And I always tell the guys, no, that's your responsibility. You're the high priest. My wife can't ever pray more than me. So if we have a financial issue, I must take it to the Lord in prayer, and he will give me the answer.
Oh, yeah.
Hallelujah.
Yes.
Become the priest of the house. That's great. Shall we go to John
There's a question
Makombe's
here.
question just here before we carry on? Can you read it from where you are?
Yes, we can.
We can.
In your 27 years experience, what is the most difficult part of marriage? What's the most difficult part of marriage? In our 27 years. For me, I hate it when we disagree, because we're both very feisty characters, and we're also very hot, you know, in terms of like our tempers. So I don't like it when we disagree. And granted, our disagreements are short, but in that short amount of time, believe me, we have the capacity to create so much chaos. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
but with the years, it's been having to learn to harness that, and to harness and to redirect that, all that energy into something positive and into something productive. But for me, over the 27 years, that's what I've always found the hardest, is when we disagree. I hate fighting. I hate fighting. I'm a lover, not a fighter. What's your tough part?
Yeah, I think I agree with you on that one. You know, we're both quite hot-headed. You know, in Sarah's case, she's got a bit of that Chaka Zulu blood in her,
No, but you got the Caribbean thing going
I've got
on.
the you know, I'm Afro-Caribbean, so my mom's, you know, she's from the Caribbean, and they can be quite hot-headed people as well. So we've both got that in us, you know. But I think, yeah, the difficulties. Gosh, we've had a few. You know, I mean, it's not fun when you're in the valleys of marriage, and the valleys could be caused by a variety of things, like you were saying. You know, it could be job loss, it could be, you know, just seasons. You know, we've had a couple of seasons where we were doing very well in a business, and then the business just went belly up, and you know, one minute you're flying, and then you don't have any money, and you're trying to figure out and reconcile that.
You just hit a real one. That's a good answer. Yeah, carry on, honey.
So you know, it's so unpleasant. You know, I remember sitting down with my children and my family and saying to them in one season, I said to them, guys, here's the deal. We don't have any money. Nobody's going to private school. We're not going to live in a fancy house. It's going to take probably 3 years to get out of this hole. But guess what? We're going to get out. So those, you know, nobody.
Pastor Fungi.
Yeah.
No, it's a combination. That's so true, honey. And also, even I just remembered in the early years, one of the things I used to find challenging was there were times that it sounded like we were pulling in two different directions. You know what I mean? And so even like as he's saying with some of these business ideas, in my mind, I'd be like, this is never going to work. It's never going to work. This is a harebrained. I don't like the person you're partnering with. I feel like we're going to make a huge loss. And then he would say, how do you know? I went to school for this. I read. I know these things. And I'd say, I can just feel it. I can just feel it. And for me, it was that woman's intuition. And to be honest, I think maybe it's just me hearing God. That's the prophetic part of my gifting. And then in time, that thing would happen. So I had to learn early on in our early years to not say, because believe me, everything within you wants to say, I told you so. But even if you say, I told you so, and you laugh at him, we're in the same boat, we're both sinking. So there's no time to gloat and say, I told you so. We need to be, bailing water out of this boat and making this thing stay afloat. Do you see? I got lyrics, man. Out of this boat and make it stay afloat.
No, that's not as it's not as great as you think.
Thank you for that. There is a question here from Shama, but it ties in with the question that we already have. If there's any point that you felt like ministry was getting in the way, we had a question in terms of ministry, work, and business. You ever felt like all of that was getting in the way of your marriage, and how did you manage?
Absolutely. And I think something, the number of couples who have sacrificed their marriage on the altar of it's either a business or it's a ministry. It is such a tragedy when that happens. It is a tragedy because you see, just because we're well intentioned, and just because our heart is in the right place does not mean that we're going to make the right decisions. One of the things that we have learned to do, I mean, as recently as just yesterday, I was talking to Sarah. A couple of days ago, I was having a conversation with her about a business opportunity. It was a property that we were thinking of buying, and I was discussing the ins and outs of it with her. And when I was talking to the individual about buying this property, in my mind, I thought, yeah, no problem, we'll put the money in, we'll do this, da 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 da. And then I mentioned it to her, because that's the thing that we often don't do. We then just go and run off on our own. I mentioned it to her, and then she gave me a completely different perspective on it and said, actually, you know what? We could do that, but this is actually an opportunity for you to get far, far away from this transaction. And I want to show you how it will actually be better for us in the long term. So when I was younger, like most men, I didn't like being told what to do. You know what I mean? We hate being told what to do by our wives. And remember, we are only 6 months apart in age. So my logic was, first of all, I'm 6 months older than you, so you need to listen to me. All right. But the other perspective was, yeah, I'm just used to doing things on my own, and now you're here and you're telling me what to do. So a lot of times what we do is, especially when it comes to things like ministry is a wonderful thing. It is. It's an amazing thing. You're helping people, you're inspiring people. But if there's any level of disagreement long term about what you're trying to accomplish and you're not agreed, it's never going to work. So I have learned that I would rather be focused on the primary ministry, which is her and my family. Yeah, because the Bible tells, the Bible says this, and it's a scary scripture. I remember it. It says, he who troubles his family will inherit the wind. If you are more focused on, I want to help people, but I want to bless these people. I've learned that my primary constituency is my family. And I remember one time we got to the stage, even in ministry, where, you're pushing hard, you're doing everything. But I felt like the ministry was becoming, it was like sucking the life out of us. It was costing us so much money. I was losing my peace doing it. And then I asked myself the question, the Bible says he who is unable to take care of his own family is worse than an unbeliever. So I said, if this thing is causing me not to have the resources to look after my family, then I'm doing something wrong. And I went back to basics. I'm looking after the family first, and everything else has to come second, So we've tried over the years to really be in a place of agreement in whatever we're doing. And I promise you, when you are in a place of agreement, you will make great decisions.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Pastor Funga is right. Our primary constituency is the family. Yeah.
That's right. So if the extinguisher is business or ministry, then your spouse is your primary constituency. I hope that sinks in with the men and with the women as well.
You know what? One of our mentors, Dr. Naidu, says, "Church is God's wife, and if you are leaving your wife to Jesus' wife, you are committing adultery." So many people, they commit adultery. They leave their wives and they go to Jesus' wife, and they
Yes.
to spend
Yeah.
time with Jesus' wife, leaving their own wives starving.
Wow, that's brilliant.
It's so true. I think he's spot on. I actually managed to listen to a bit of him when he was on your show. So that is a wonderful perspective. You know what I mean? You can never go wrong when you are honoring your spouse in the fear of the Lord. You know what I mean? When you're submitting in the fear of the Lord, you can't go wrong. God will honor it. He has a way. I keep telling people this, even in business, I've learned that the more I honor my wife, so I not just in honoring in terms of I buy her stuff and things like that, but the more I honor her word, the more I try and figure out ways of blowing her mind, the more I am investing in her, the more God starts pouring money into my pocket. I promise you, it's crazy. Like literally, I have seen the connection. You know what I mean? That when I am doing Sarah good because she's God's daughter. Oh my God, guess what she does? Guess what he does? He starts opening those windows and things start flowing that if I hadn't been doing what I was doing here, it would have never worked. And she'll tell you the same thing.
When we then pray, we're praying from a place of agreement. It's the prayer of agreement, and we're in unity and we're of one mind. Anything with two heads is a monster. When there is division, you're never going to go in the same direction. So when we're in one accord like that, everything works for us.
Mm.
Yeah.
That's right. MC Tandy, I see you, girl. She says buying her stuff is good. That's real good. That's right. If we go to the issue of intimacy and thickness in a relationship, there are times when we started out in marriage, we never thought that there was a time when we would not get intimate because I'm sick. And at a given point, I was in hospital for
Almost a month.
almost a month, and
Mhm.
you're used to getting intimate every day. How do you help out a couple that, in my case, it was different. I was in hospital. What if they are together at home and
Carrying
you
the other
can't
partner.
get it going? One needs it, but then the other spouse is not well. How do
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
advise?
Before I even answer this, I'll tell you there's a story that one of the couples that we were mentoring, the husband got so upset with the wife always saying, no, I can't make love to you because my blood pressure is high. He kept saying that over and over and over again. And then the husband went and bought, a blood pressure machine. He said, no, I need to just check and see exactly where your blood because,
Hallelujah.
because this is an excuse.
Yeah.
Listen, one of the most challenging areas I think is, couples have very different sexual drives, and at different seasons. I love what Miles Monroe used to say all the time. He used to say, sex for a man is not a want, it's a need, you
Yeah.
know. And when you recognize that it's a need, then you understand that it's a thing. It's not something that I'd like to have it. It's like I have got to have it. Because if you don't get it,
For the car.
yeah, it kind of messes up with your head big time. I mean, there's a lot of times when, Sarah will say to me, you're acting like, she can tell actually when all of a sudden something very, very small becomes very, very big. And it's usually a product of, guy, I need to take care of you and then you'll be fine. You know what I mean? But, there are unfortunately seasons where, like you said, there is sickness, and this is the thing. You have to, gosh, self-control is a fruit of the spirit.
You are right, man.
It's a fruit of the spirit, and I'm amazed at how many times. A lot of times we are almost ashamed of involving God in some of these conversations because what we do is it's like most of us have taken our teaching about sex and things like that from the devil. Who has and who has never had sex. He doesn't know the first thing about sex, but he's our teacher. What we fail to understand is that God gave us the wonderful blessing of sex. And I think I can understand why people do that sometimes, because sex can be so amazing, you almost think it's illegal. Like literally, you think like this something this can't be right. It's too good to be holy. You know what I mean? So what you do is, yeah.
Yeah.
But what we have learned to do is we've learned to involve God even in that area. And it may sound so deep to some people, but like if I can say, Lord, thank you so much. I mean, this was phenomenal. Thank you, Lord. And if you can do that, at that time, you can also do that when there's a difficult challenge where you're saying, hey, Lord, right now, man, this woman is sick. First of all, Lord, I pray for healing upon her, because that would be awesome. If you heal her, then we don't have a problem. But Lord, also I'm praying that you help me, because the reality is there will be seasons like that, especially, like when a woman has had a child, or like you're saying, when you've been ill, there may be a period of, a few weeks where that's not available. I mean, one of the decisions I made for me as a man, I said, yeah, regardless of how difficult those challenges may be, I'm never, ever going to look outside of my marriage for a resource and a solution. And the reason for that, and the predominant reason, first of all, I fear God. I mean, that's a given. But critically, I never wanted to give any woman that power over my wife. You know what I mean? I always tell Sarah, over 27 years of marriage, and I can say this publicly on this forum, there's no woman who can ever come on any platform that I'm on and say, I know Jamie more than Sarah does. There's no woman like that, because I have decided, as a decision, as an act of my will, to say, no woman will ever make my wife feel inferior because I have a secret with her that my wife does not know. You understand? And listen, guys, we've had some very difficult conversations. One time I had a conversation with Sarah where, I said to her one time, I met a woman and I felt very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I was in South Africa at the time, and we were working in South Africa at the time,
And living in
South Africa. And I met a woman in an elevator, and she said to me, because I knew her from back in the day, and she said to me, oh, it'd be nice if we could go for lunch. She gave me her number, and I didn't like the way I felt. Something inside me just didn't feel right. I thought, I felt like this would have been a good idea, but deep down I knew if I go there, I'm going to have a problem. I went home and I sat down with Sarah and I said, Sarah, this is what has happened. It was a difficult conversation because no woman wants to hear that. But I said, look, this is where I get my safety. If I'm going to be honest with you, then you can protect me. You see, I have to create a boundary around this. I spoke to Sarah and we dealt with it. And no word of a lie, the following week, I saw that woman in the same building. And she said to me, oh, I thought you were going to call me. I looked at her and I felt nothing. Like everything inside me had died, towards her. I believe that is a product of God working with us to help us. Because the Bible tells that he's touched with the feeling of our infirmities. He knows the challenges. He knows the difficulties. Do you see what I mean? But a lot of times what we do is we don't want to talk about stuff like that. So Sarah and I, we talk very honestly about that area. I'll tell her, Sarah, this is what I'm struggling with. Help me. She'll tell me, hey, dude, listen, you need to step up. The communication is always going to be key. Yeah.
Awesome. We are almost coming to a close. I'm sorry for taking a lot of time, but it would be so great if you can speak to couples whose marriage is fizzling out and they feel like this is dead, like there's no going back in it. What would you advise them?
Remember what brought you together. You guys, whoever is out there, if it's possible, sit down and remember what brought you together. Remember the good times. Remember the laughter. Remember the reason that made you commit and made you walk down that aisle and made you decide, you know what, let's do this thing, let's get married. You've got to remember, because sometimes when the relationship has fizzled, everything begins to look, you forget. You forget how good things were. You forget the good times you've had. You forget what he's done for you. You forget what she's done for you. You forget just how beautiful you are together. You forget how powerful you are together. And then depending on who's speaking in your ear, the options, you start hearing, you know what? You've got options. So the options start coming up and you start considering the options. And we're living in a time right now where a lot of believers, we're not even talking about the unbelievers. We're in a time and a state of apostasy. We're in a time where we're accepting things that we ought not to accept, where we're cheating. on
Mm.
one another in here, before we even manifest it physically. And you know
Mm.
what? It's okay.
Mm.
We're being told there are options. In
Yeah.
our groups, with our girls, with the guys, we're being told that there are options. And so we're considering those things. And many times the manifestation of the harvest comes way after the seed has been planted.
Mm.
So I
Mm.
just
Mm.
want to encourage guys who are out there, remember what brought you together.
Yeah.
And I also want to encourage you to tell you that, you know what, as bad as it may
Mm.
seem, this too shall pass,
Mm-hmm.
and you're
Mm-hmm.
able to come through that. Whether you guys are dealing with, I don't know, it doesn't matter. It could be financial, it could be health, it could be infidelity. There is nothing that you cannot overcome if you decide, that we're gonna give this thing a shot. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, I love the way that you said that, Sarah. I would just add really quickly, something that we've been speaking throughout the session, just the importance of investment, where your heart is, that's where your treasure will be also. We find all too often people make an investment when they first get together. I mean, when you get together, there's no amount of money you're not willing to spend on one another. You take each other out, you're on the phone for hours on end, you'll do whatever it takes.
Mm.
But then the longer you're together, you stop making investments, and a lot of relationships are spiritually bankrupt because people have stopped making an investment. They're literally overdrawn because you are, a lot of us are on harvest. We're harvesting seeds that we planted in maybe 2000, and we're in 2020. you know
Mm.
Unfortunately, what you've got to understand is every year and every day you've got to be sowing a seed. That's how we live our lives. Every day we're sowing a seed because the seed goes into your future. And especially when you're looking at a relationship and marriage, right now we're in the month of July. I'm already thinking about November. And I'm thinking, because that's where Sarah's birthday is. And I'm already thinking about, right, so where am I going to take her? How do I blow her mind? Because last year I blew her mind like this, like this, like this. But now I have to take it to another level. You understand? I'm trying to figure out every day, all right, I'm going to buy flowers. I'm going to buy this. John Lewis opened the other day and I got into the shop and I said, right, it doesn't have to be expensive. I spent probably 30 quid on her. But I went in there and I bought her a little notebook that says "Hello, beautiful," and some, and La Occitane, because she likes that. It cost 30 quid, literally. But I've decided every day I need to make an investment. So, guys, I just say to the couple, like Sarah said, to reinforce what she said, remember what brought you together, but critically, make an investment every single day because your harvest will overtake your seed. That's so important.
Absolutely. And you know what? I think my final one is pride. Get rid of the pride.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so many times we become so prideful and so full, so full of pride. You can't say I'm sorry. You know what I mean? You can't apologize. You're waiting for her to apologize first or him to apologize first.
Mm.
For me, the way I live my life in our home, I'm actually very conservative. We're both very conservative in the way we believe in marriage. We believe in the good old the foundation of marriage from the word. And so for me, in my house, if I'm wrong, I'm not too proud to say I'm sorry. I'm not too proud to beg. I'm not too proud to make amends. I'm not trying to, this is the one person that I cannot show off to. He's seen me at my best. He's seen me at my worst. He's seen me when I've been out of my mind. And how do I then get too proud to say to him, I'm sorry? We had, I'll give you an example. About 3 days before his birthday on the 14th of June, all of a sudden there was just literally, it felt like a wind of chaos came in, and we had a disagreement. And this disagreement, I didn't even see it coming. Neither of us saw it coming. But the next day I woke up because and I said to myself, I feel aggrieved, but right now I'd rather win the person than win the fight.
The
Yeah.
argument.
And I went and I made my peace with my husband. And afterwards we spoke about it, and it was so funny. We laughed about it. And yet, if for me at that time, it was an opportunity for me to hold on to it, and it would have just caused so much chaos.
Yeah.
But I thought to myself, you know what? Let me go and make amends. And that is what love does. Love is patient. Love is kind.
Oh yeah.
And those are the things that we forget. So to those couples out there right now who've got that static and your marriage, things don't seem as rosy. Think about being kind to one another, compassionate to one another, that humanity towards one another.
Mm.
That is the foundation for love.
Awesome homework, baby.
Yes, you know what? An hour with the Garandes is just like 10 minutes, you know.
It's already over. Yeah, it's crazy. It's gone
Well,
quick.
Paid the Garandes for president. Yay.
Oh, both of us. Yeah.
we now have a constituency. I'll be the
Yeah.
campaign. I'll manage the campaign.
I'll be your VP. I want you to be the president.
Okay.
I'll be your VP.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know what, Pastor Sarah and Dr. Jamie, before you leave, we always say when we are bringing people on this platform, we are bringing them for ourselves. We want to learn more. We are quite selfish. Though we always share with others on Facebook, but we want you to give us a homework as you go, as we are living now. What would be the homework? What are the tips that you may give to us?
Okay. First of all, I wanted to say, I want to appreciate both of you again for allowing us to come onto this platform. You look amazing together, by the way. I mean, you really do, and I've been watching you the whole time. Yeah, you look amazing together, and I get very excited when I see beautiful couples together. So well done. For me, I would say the homework is something that I did many years ago. I found myself in a particular season of our relationship fighting all the time. We'd fight like just for no reason. We'd just be fighting. And I was like, I don't understand what's going on, So I said, but I love my wife, and I think good things towards her. And it was like the Spirit of God said to me, why don't you write down your thoughts for 24 hours? Just for a whole day. Just write down every thought that you get. And I did for a 24-hour period. And I quickly saw a trend. I found that I was arguing with Sarah in my head over a lot of things, you see. So what would happen is, by the time I met her, what you're thinking, as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. So the thought had to manifest. The argument had to
Out of
happen.
the abundance of the heart, the
Yeah.
mouth speaks.
So what I did is that simple exercise enabled me to then realize, okay, I've got to switch up and change what I'm meditating on. I was obviously meditating on the wrong thing. You know what I mean? So my homework to you would be very simple. If you think, because people even say it's not just about marriage, but every area. What do you think about most of the time? They say, I think about, God, and I think about Jesus, and I think about the Holy Spirit. It's not true. Most of the times you'll find you're thinking about really negative stuff. You know what I mean? So what you need to do is I'd encourage you to, for a 24-hour period, be disciplined enough to write down your thoughts for that time. And then you will find a theme developing. And then you will know exactly where you need to do your work. If you're always scrapping with your wife, you need to switch up and change that. Yeah.
This is powerful.
Well, before I say good night or goodbye, I just want you to look at the screen, Pastor Jamie and Pastor Sarah.
Precious.
Thank you.
Okay.
So when I'm making a date, it's not because of me.
I get that.
Others who are outside, yeah.
No problem. We'd love to come back. Thank you for having us. It will be a pleasure.
It's been really amazing. We would love to have you all night, but of course we know that you have to go and get intimate. We have to
go as well.
Well,
they've told you what to do. You heard them, right?
It has been
I'll show you levels.
I love that. No, thank you.
That bit.
Say that again.
No, I said I'll show him levels.
Fire!
That's awesome.
So we would like to take this opportunity to say thank you so much, Dr. Garande and Pastor Sarah, for giving us your precious possession, which is your time. To our viewers out there, we really thank you for tuning in. May I also say, Dr. Garande and Pastor Sarah, they are on Instagram as Bliss for Couples.
And Facebook
as well as on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
If you are, passing through those challenges that I've been talking to, these are the go-to, get in touch with them. They will definitely hold your hand and walk with you throughout those challenges that we've been talking about. What more shall we say apart from saying thank you so much to our viewers? And I know there are pastors who are there on the platform. Pastors, we appreciate you. We love you so much for following and supporting us. For me and my beautiful wife Priscilla here, we're going to execute. Thank you so much. God bless you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Love you. Love you.
You. God bless you.